welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. This is the Midlife Woman's podcast for a confident and joyful journey. I'm your host, Christina Smith, and twice a week I'll be bringing you topics that impact midlife women the most. I hear it from my clients. They have health concerns around perimenopause and menopause. We have mental and emotional challenges going on that I want to help you manage and work through. I want to talk about how we deepen our relationships and our friendships in midlife, and then what we do when we want more, how we get clear on that, and how we start moving forward confidently and joyfully, because that's what this journey is about. I want midlife women to come together, create a community to revolutionize how we see midlife. Tune in for this week's topic. Welcome back, shifters. It is another week in our October of self-love, and self-love shows up in so many ways, right? So one of the ways that we're going to talk about with Mira Dessy today is about how we feed ourselves and make that an act of self-love. And this is a big one for me because me and food have had some struggles over the years. So I am really excited to talk to the ingredient guru about how we care for ourselves better with food. So welcome, Mira. Thank you so much for being here.
Christina, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk with you.
I am too. But before we get started, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what it is that you do.
Sure. So I am known as the ingredient guru. And what that means is I'm that sort of nerdly person that walks around the grocery store and reads all the packages and doesn't buy them and subscribes to a whole bunch of industry newsletters so I can see all the things they're doing to our food in order to then be able to share with people and help them find better health and whole food, real food solutions.
That's really beautiful. And I got to tell you, I grew up in a house where I learned how to cook by boxes and bags, right? If the food came in a box, it had its own, its own instructions and stuff because I was, a latchkey kid. So I often made myself dinner. And so I didn't really learn to cook. And I ended up eating a lot of garbage in my life, like my breakfast. I was just joking with a friend the other day. My breakfast used to be Pepsi and Doritos, right? And then in my mid-30s, I got the worst stomach problems, and it took a really long time to solve them. I actually went to health coaching school just to figure out if there was something I could be doing different. And surprise, surprise, 7 Pepsis a day isn't the recommended diet.
No kidding. Well, and the other thing that I think is so challenging for so many people, the how we feed ourselves is one of those things. Our bodies are so miraculously made, it can tolerate a lot of abuse. And all of a sudden, when things start not working properly, we don't know where that came from because it has taken place, like in your case, for example, over decades.
Mm-hmm.
And then the symptoms mimic so many other things. You wind up going through this battery of tests. And unfortunately, and I have personally been down this road myself as well. Unfortunately, as wonderful as doctors are, and as much as they care and they want to help and they want to support, their nutrition education is about that much.
So small.
And they don't necessarily look at food as part of the solution.
Mm. Yeah, it definitely is part of the solution because after I fixed my diet, I wouldn't say everything went away. I had some stress issues too that I really had to manage through. But it's really the way that I was looking at food, where it was like even today when I get into my hot flashes or my PMS, I can get to the point where I'm like, I've been eating for 46 years. I got to do this for the rest of my life. And it becomes frustrating to me because of all the issues that I've had that now I stay away from a lot of foods because I know that they're not going to make me feel good. And so I can get really frustrated with this part. And the thing that has helped me is a lot of self compassion and being able to say, okay, Christina, this is like just like the topic of our show, right? Is like eating is a form of self love. And I'm not sure, I'm sure that there's all kinds of therapeutic issues in my head around food. And I think that there are for a lot of women because at least when I was growing up, it was like, no fats, all the fats are bad, don't eat fats, right? And then what did the food companies do? But they threw in a lot of sugar because they were like, well, we need to get flavor somehow. Let's throw in sugar. And then our culture got even more obese. And we were like, oh, maybe sugar's bad.
Well, and one of the things that I want to address something you said right at the very beginning of that statement
Mhm.
is, talking about trying to overcome decades of mindless eating. We just
Mm,
ate. Food was food. We're
mhm.
taught growing up, oh, food doesn't really matter. Like calories, a calorie is a calorie. And we could dive deeper into that if you want, but they are certainly not all equal. And
Right.
then the other thing that happens is everybody gives us this, oh, well, if you want to insert health condition here, that you're looking
Mhm.
to lose weight, eat less, exercise more. That's not always the answer. The answer is we need to eat the right foods. And maybe we're
Mm,
exercising too much. Like it's all about bio-individuality. However, one of the things that tends to happen is a lot of people then go, oh, I need to really like double down. I need to get firm with myself. I need to really pay attention to everything. And we become so hyper focused that there is a potential to develop a condition called orthorexia.
yes, I had that when I went to health coaching school because of that.
Right, where everything has to be perfect. And what that essentially does is take away any enjoyment you possibly ever had with food because you are so hyper focused on everything has to be exactly right. You can't eat out, you can't eat with friends, you can't enjoy treats, you can't do all these things. And food is definitely there to nourish us and to support our body so that we can grow and be healthy, but it's also part of our community,
Mm,
and it's part of gatherings and all of these things that get blown out the window when we all of a sudden decide that we have to be perfect,
mm,
and perfect is really actually kind of icky. The goal is instead to be mindful and to learn
mm.
to pay attention so that we can really listen to what's going on with our body.
Yeah, I love that so much because that's what I've learned to do. And I feel like for all those people out there that have ever been called too sensitive, I want you to celebrate that
Yeah.
because it's my sensitivity that can say, that tomato is not going to feel good in my stomach. And I already know that, right? Because of my past experience. But the only reason I know that is because I had to become really mindful about how food felt in my body. And it's a thing that I never paid attention to before. Like you said, we just put the calories in because we have to eat 3 times a day or whatever, bio individually is works for us. But that mindfulness has had me going, oh, now I actually know that a Pepsi isn't going to feel good. Or
Mhm.
even if it doesn't hurt me in the moment, like I know I'm going to crash in an hour, I'm not going to feel good, and I don't really have time to be that fuzzy headed today, right? So I can start getting used to like, how does my body react to that? Is that what you mean by mindfulness?
That's part of it. There's a
Okay.
couple of different aspects. So one is certainly recognizing when your body doesn't feel well when you eat certain things,
Mm-hmm.
because part of the reason we eat certain things is thanks to the food producers who make them hyper palatable.
Mm-hmm.
And we essentially become addicted to, oh, I'm hungry, I'll have Doritos. Oh, I'm thirsty, I'll have a Pepsi, whatever. Those become our default settings for food and thirst, quenching. And really, it's neither.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of it is also learning to tap in mindfully to some of the habits that we've built. Because again, we tend to eat on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
Humans like the same, not not everybody likes the same 20 foods, but as humans, we tend to like about 20 foods. We have our favorites, and those are the ones that we want to eat all the time. And unfortunately, if we grow up without good options or good healthy habits modeled for us, we then grow up thinking that, some of these things that pass for food at the grocery store are what we should be eating. And then the other part of that, the most important part, is we also don't learn to tie how we're feeling emotionally or energetically with the food choices that we're making.
Hmm.
And it's really challenging because I remember when I first went to school and there was this form that said, what do you eat when you're happy? What do you eat when you're sad? What do you eat when you're angry? What do you
Hmm.
eat? And I'm like, who thinks about that? And the
Right. We
answer,
just do it automatically.
right. And the answer for most of them, by the way, was chocolate. But
When I'm feeling an emotion, chocolate is the answer.
right. But by the end of my training, I had really developed so much more awareness. And I could tell there were certain times where, like, if I was stressed or angry, I wanted something crunchy. I needed something noisy, and salt was like a really big thing. And I never really thought about that before.
Hmm.
And I think that for many of us, because we're not taught to look at ourselves as this holistic whole body
Hmm.
aspect of being, we forget that it is truly mind, body, spirit. And so as we nourish the body, we're also nourishing or responding to other aspects of ourselves that may need support as well. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we're just eating because, yes, I'm hungry. The weird thing is, I remember being so startled. It was probably about three-quarters of the way through school when I got to a point where I realized that when you nourish your body instead of just feeding it, a lot of your cravings go away.
Hmm.
Was no longer craving sweets the same way I used to. I was no longer as drawn to certain foods because I was really developing this awareness of
Hmm.
how to connect with my body. And then the moment that really kind of blew me away, and I find this works with clients too, because as we start changing our diet, we go through learning how to balance, create foundational habits, add more veggies, eat less sugar, all those wonderful things. All of a sudden they go, I'm craving broccoli. Is that weird? I'm like, no, that's a craving I can support.
Yes, yes, that happens to me too. Like once I started paying attention to my body, all that garbage that I was buying at the gas stations for, a snack or a lunch or whatever, like I started realizing that it wasn't making me feel good. And even today, like I used to love sweets. And today, like one or two bites is plenty for me. Like I do not need that. Now my husband has the opposite problem. He wants to eat everything. So he like we're jealous of each other because I want to be able to be like, I can eat anything and just throw it in my stomach. And he wants to be to the point where he is just being a little bit more mindful because his bowls of ice cream are a bit large. Um, my judgment. But that is true after a while because now I actually crave salads, which is, who knew that that could be a thing, right? That I
Mhm.
actually like crave the greens and I crave fiber foods because I know that they're going to help me feel better and they're going to last me longer. Like I can't even imagine eating the way I did 15 years ago today because I feel like I would be so exhausted and cranky. And when I think back to that period of my life, I was going through a divorce and stuff. And I know I was eating all of the garbage, right? Lots of pizza, lots of stuff. And not that pizza is bad for you, but I'm sure that you talk about like a balance of foods, right? And having just that one food. Now when I eat pizza, it has to be like a Friday or Saturday night when I have nothing else to do because chances are I know in my body I'm gonna go right to sleep. and or I'm going to feel drowsy. Like I can't do pizza during the day. I'm going to need a nap.
And,
And so
and
that's one of my sensitivities and how I've learned how to be mindful of being like, okay, well, there's certain foods that I are not going to help me during the day because I'm not going to last.
sure. And some of it too is also learning to find alternatives
Mm,
to the foods that we love. So, for example, I know that I struggle with gluten,
mm,
doesn't agree with me.
mhm,
And so for me, if I'm going to have a pizza, generally it needs to be something that's on a, I can't do a traditional thick crust, stuffed crust. Like I used
mm,
to do all of that when I was in college. And even when I was a young adult, like that was my thing. I loved pizza. And now, generally, either it's going to be made from a gluten free dough or a cauliflower base, and or it's going to be something like a pizza, perhaps a siete wrap with the sauce and all the toppings and the everything. And I'm just making little mini ones and having those
mm,
instead. And what I find, and often when I'm working with people around the concept of mindfulness, trying to improve, help them, build that deeper connection, it's not so much about the food in the end. It's about the company, or it's about
mm,
the setting, or it's about what's going on that makes it
mm,
even more enjoyable for us. Because if it was just about the food, I think we're missing a whole piece of how we're nourishing ourselves.
mm. I really like that. Yeah. Because it really depends on, for me, the attitude I have when I get in the kitchen. Because the biggest thing for me is I grew up as like the second mother to my four siblings. And so I was always in charge of the cooking and the dinner and the blah, blah, blah. And I grew up where the kitchen wasn't a fun place to be. It was just like a lot of work. And my husband grew up the complete opposite, where being in the kitchen meant your family was around, great food was being made, conversation was happening. And they had like this really good, you know, feeling around being in the kitchen, where it was like the complete opposite for me. So for me, I have to, like, I mean, even over above, because I think like so many people know what they should and should not eat. It's
Yeah.
this mindfulness piece, right? I mean, we already know that the 12 chocolate cupcakes for breakfast isn't good, but we want to do it anyway. And that's really why I wrote the Inviting Shift book, because when I became a health coach, it was like these women who want to lose weight, most of the time they know what they need to do, right? It's actually getting through what I call the F stage, fear, fortitude, or whatever F word you want to
Yeah.
use, because that's where we start making the changes, right? And that's where we start making these different choices. And that's really the hard part. It's not the whole, okay, I get it. I shouldn't do gluten or sugar or whatever is the thing that's
Yeah.
catalyst in me, right? That's making the bad choices. But when we actually go to make those choices, like you said, we can often go back to those defaults, right? Like, I'm really hungry. I don't have a lot of time. Great. I can grab a Pepsi and Doritos. I
Hmm.
knew that that wasn't nourishing me, but I didn't give myself enough, like I didn't put enough emphasis on this part of ourselves, that like, how am I nourishing my body? And it
Yeah.
wasn't just food, it was often like drinking enough water or getting enough sleep, right? Like all these things that we know we should be doing. Eating fresh foods, whole foods are always the best foods, right? Like, for me it was really about, how do I get myself to stop in the moment, take a breath, have some
Hmm.
compassion, and say, yes, Christina, I know that you're really busy, and we're going to take 30 minutes to go make ourselves something that's worth eating, that's actually going to nourish us and help us get through the rest of the day, instead of going back to those defaults. And I guess I'm bringing this up because I want people to know that it sounds like such a simple thing. Like Maya Angelou, doesn't she say, like, when you know better, you do
Never do
better?
better, right?
Not all the time.
Well, and there's 2 points that I'd like to bring up.
Hmm.
One is, I mentioned a moment ago that for a lot of people, food is about gathering and family or friends and whatever. That doesn't mean that that's the only thing that it's about. Sometimes
Mm,
food is about taking that time for yourself and
Mm,
prepare something really special because it is a form of self-care and self-love
mm,
to do that. So, for example, for me, my husband does not like lamb. I love it. And so we usually have one or two not pork chops, lamb chops in the freezer. And if he happens to be away, he's, over at a friend's playing pool or he's out on a trip or whatever, I'm having lamb chop for dinner.
mm,
And I make myself like this really lovely meal and I sit down and yes, sometimes I put it on the good china and sometimes I'll even light a candle. It's about taking care of yourself and nourishing yourself. The
mm,
other thing that comes up is because so much of what we've learned is on autopilot. It's a default setting. It's not like you're expected to listen to this podcast, for example, and then tomorrow you're going to wake up and bam, everything's going to be great.
person.
Right. It's about baby steps. It's about
Mm,
thinking, okay, what are some things that I can do that would make this better, easier, more supportive for me? Maybe
mm,
I can make myself a few salad in a jar things where you layer them in a particular order and you've got, two or three of them in the fridge ready to go. So then when you want something to eat, there it is. Because one of the things
mm,
that happens when we're feeling hungry, overwhelmed, sad, insert whatever here, we reach for the junk because it's a quick fix. And our bodies have learned that it's a quick fix and our brain sort of disassociates. If we go, oh, wait, I could do that. Or I've got this really yummy salad that I actually made myself with my favorite blue cheese dressing. So
mm,
I'm going to have that. That
mm,
makes it easy. Or also making sure that we look at where do you struggle the most. Some people, breakfast is a really hard thing. I don't know what to do for breakfast. I'm like, I'd rather sleep. I'm up. I got to get out the door. It's easy to run through Dunkin' Donuts and just grab a donut and a coffee. So, what do you do to support yourself? How can you make that easier for you? Other people, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, man, I really need a Snickers right now. Figuring out what those trouble spots
mm,
are, start there. And then
mm.
figure
I
out
love
what can
that.
I do instead of doing that? What can I do to nourish myself? How do I have a more optimal choice
Mm,
available? And then as you start to do that, the goal is, hopefully you're working with a coach, or even if you're doing it on your own, you learn how much better you feel. And you think back and you're like, man, 3 months ago, I was like shaking down the candy machine. And now I bring a healthy snack with me and I love it. And
mhm.
as a matter of fact, the people who work around me are jealous and they want me to start making it for them too. You never know. But it's about baby steps. It's about progress, not perfection.
I really love that because I mean, even though I went to health coaching school, it took me years to get to like a 95% whole foods diet because again, I had never learned how to cook. So to expect that tomorrow I'm going to wake up and suddenly know how to whip myself up all the great tasting and good healthy foods that I wanted would be crazy. But it's really about comparing ourselves. Am I doing better this week than I was all those other weeks? Okay, great. Well, then I'm in the right direction and taking these like little steps. Cause I always think like about New Year's resolutions where do I wish that tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do the exercise and I'm going to eat right? I'm going to get the water and the blah and the meditating and the journaling. Yes, I would like to believe that tomorrow I'm going to wake up like a different person, but chances are that's way too many changes at one time for us to keep up with. That's why we see people going to the gym for the first week and then weeks 2, 3, 4, you see
Right.
less and less people again, is because they're trying to white knuckle their way through it instead of like, they do it with discipline instead of love. And I think that that's where we're trying to get to is like, we're doing this because it's really, I do this because it's really good for myself. And I love that you were talking about how we prepare, right? Like, I know that during the day, I get so busy that I don't want to stop for an hour to go cook myself a meal and do all of that stuff. So I do prepare on Sundays. I usually have some kind of bean salad that I can add to just lettuce so that all the ingredients for my salad are already in this salad. And then I just add lettuce and boom, I have a great salad and it tastes delicious because I made it on a Sunday when I had plenty of time and I could actually enjoy being in the kitchen, which is a huge thing. And I love the idea of like, you almost create a dinner date for yourself. Like, I'm going to make myself a good meal, right? Instead of expecting somebody else to do it or me doing it just for my husband or whomever. I'm going to make this really great meal because I also do that. I find that I really enjoy cooking when my husband's not in the house and I can make whatever I want without him going, "What you doing? Why you doing it that way?"
And I also think one really important thing for people to keep in mind is that we are so unused to taking care of ourselves.
Mhm.
We're used to taking care of everybody else first, especially if you're the one who does most of the nurturing in your family when it comes to, child responsibilities if you have kids, or food responsibilities, or all the different things that have to happen to make a household and a life run. If you're the one who's in charge of most of it for other people, you learn to take care of everybody else first and yourself last. So mindfulness is recognizing when you need a little love and a little attention as well. And then the other thing that we need to keep in mind about how we accomplish all of this, unfortunately, our society is very much this sort of drill sergeant, get her done, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like rah, rah, rah. It's really harsh. And instead, we need to go, oh man, like this is a little tougher than I thought. Or man, I
Mhm.
need a little more care and attention here. And if we have a blip, which is going to happen, it does. Instead
Mhm.
of beating ourselves up, going, oh, I'm such a failure. I have no willpower. I'm so weak. Like, please don't use those words to yourself, because
Yeah.
your mind and your body and your spirit, they hear what you say and what you think. And so instead we go, oh, maybe that wasn't the best choice. So now, how am I going to make sure that I am taking care of myself so that that doesn't happen again? What can I do to be mindful of the potential for this situation to happen again?
I like that. Like almost like learning a lesson from it. Like where was it that I broke down and decided that 12 cupcakes for breakfast was a good idea, right? And so and so like tracing that back so that we can learn from it, right? I mean, that's really what it is. Like, and when I ate those 12 cupcakes, how did I feel? Oh, I felt like I wanted to crash all day. And so when we keep that mindfulness in our head, at least for me, when I have a bad experience with food because I've eaten too much or I've eaten the wrong things, I always go, something to remember next time, Christina, when we're making that same
And
choice.
And I call that 3 cookie syndrome. It's something that when I'm working with clients, we talk about. Let's say, for example, the serving size on a package of cookies is 2 cookies, and you eat 3 cookies. And immediately you feel so bad that you ate 3 cookies, you just finish the rest of the sleeve of Thin Mints.
I
You're
might as
like,
well.
oh. Yeah, exactly. You get this defeatist attitude. And
Yeah.
instead we go, okay, so I had 3 cookies, wasn't the choice I wanted to make. So I'm going to accept that I did that. And I'm going to think about, was I hungry for something else? Did
Mm,
I not have enough that I needed that little extra? Like, what is it that caused me to do that? And I'm also not saying that we have to go strictly by serving sizes, because like I could talk
sure.
for a whole hour on that topic alone. But
Yeah.
to just be aware of the fact that we have this sort of weird default that happens when we overconsume something. Like, we have a cupcake and then we go, oh, that was really good, I'm gonna have another cupcake. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're sitting there with crumbs all around you and you've eaten 12 cupcakes, and you're like, oh, like now I don't feel good. How do we stop ourselves from devolving into that sort of mindless downward spiral. And
Mm.
the way we do that is by paying attention and by being kind to ourselves.
Mm. I've been watching this Netflix documentary on centarians, on people who are
Oh,
100, right?
yeah, the blue
And
line. Yeah.
yeah, and part of that is about food, but it's like the one culture, and I forget, you have to watch the documentary if you want to know. But there was one culture that they were studying where they only eat to their 80% full. That's
Right,
their
that's the
cultural.
Japanese. Right,
There you
their
go, the
concept is you
Japanese.
eat till you're 80% full.
Yeah, which I think is so different than how I mean, the serving sizes that we have here in the US are kind of insane. The foods that they give us, and the really, really dense foods, like if you go out to eat and they're just like, that's gotta feed 3 people, right? How is that my serving size?
I
But
know.
I know that in this culture, we are used to eating until we are like stuffed, and that's never really felt good to me. My husband doesn't ever hit that point. I don't know. I don't know if what's going on with his stomach, but he's got like an extra stomach somewhere because he never, and he eats a huge amount of food. Um, but his mindfulness is that he fasts so that he can eat in a short period of time, and he can eat almost as much as he wants to eat because he's, eating all his calories within a few hours. And that is the way that mindfully he's come to the conclusion that that actually makes him feel really good. It gives him energy during the day. He gets a feeling of satiation, or of being satiated, so
Sure.
that he doesn't do all the craving all the time. And he really, I mean, during the day when he's working, he doesn't even think about food, which is pretty amazing for him. So I guess what I'm getting to the point of, like, this is all individualized. And that's why coming back to the mindfulness is so important. Like, what actually feels good in my body? I've tried his fasting because I would be a big fan of being able to eat just once a day and like getting all my calories in. But my body is built more like a small rodent, where
Mhm.
it really wants me to eat like 10 times a day, just like 3 bites. And that's painful for me sometimes. But and I because of that, I've been able to, like, okay, well, here's little snacks. And in my life, I never really had snacks. I had snacks for meals maybe, but like I didn't have snacks in addition to my meals. And that actually helps me stay energetically good all day and nice and clear, because I guess my metabolism is just constantly working, and that feels good to me. Whereas it's not going to feel good for my husband,
Yeah,
because if he starts eating, he'll have the 12 cupcakes and the cookies and all the things. He eats good food too, but whatever's available, he'll shove it in his mouth. And so I really think, and that's why I brought you on here, was that eating well and being mindful about our food is a way that we really nourish and nurture ourselves, right? So this is
yes.
like I talk about archetypes a lot. So this is a bit like our mother archetype. And like you said, we rarely mother ourselves. And
Mhm.
this is, you said it in different words, but I'm going to say that we rarely mother ourselves. We take care of everyone else first, is what you were saying. And then, it's almost like we have to deserve taking
Mhm.
care of ourselves. Like, have I earned taking care of myself, instead of going, I don't need a special occasion to make myself a lamb chop or whatever it is that I want. I can do it anytime. And I
Right.
know that when I'm actually cooking from real ingredients, now that I've learned, um, there's something really beautiful about it. There's something really wonderful about smelling the foods as they're cooking, and like a lot of love that goes into it, and, tasting and stuff. It's become a more beautiful experience. So even if your experiences in the kitchen haven't been great thus far, that
Yeah.
can shift. For me, it took a lot of compassion and patience of going, okay, Christina, I know you're really hungry now, because I used to wait until I was like starving and my brain was
Oh, yeah,
starving. So now I notice it because I'm more mindful. I notice it ahead of time. Wow, I'm going to be hungry in like an hour. I
yeah.
really should stop what I'm doing and go take care of that. Because if I don't, I know that the rest of my day, emotionally, mentally, gets all fuzzy if I get to that, like, I'm starving right now kind of phase. It's
Yeah.
like that a Snickers commercial, the diva in the back seat. They're like, I think you need a snack. You're hangry.
Yeah, right. And I also want to encourage people to remember that the more we take care of ourselves, the more energy, resilience, flexibility, foundation we have to take care of others.
Yeah.
Not about being selfish, it's about being practical. Because if you burn yourself out and exhaust yourself because you're doing for everybody else, and so all that's left is to go, oh, yeah, there's popcorn for dinner. Like,
Mm.
that's not going to be a great choice. Somewhere down the line, it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I know that you have a free gift for us. You want to tell us about that?
I do. I'm so excited. So, as the ingredient guru, one of the things that I believe is we should be able to nurture ourselves under any circumstance, including during emergency situations. So, I have a program called the Preparedness Pantry Masterclass where I teach people how to build a preparedness pantry, how to build it with foods that their family will actually eat. Please
Oh,
don't go buy to say that. and
brilliant.
and so what I've done is the first module of that class is called 10 Tips for Emergency Preparedness. And this is just general emergency preparedness, things that you need to know to be prepared. I have opened that module up for free to everybody who's listening to this. And
Oh, thank
so
you.
I will send you the link. Yes. And you're welcome to come and take that class and learn more about the things you need to know.
What a great way to take care of yourself is to feel prepared for when emergencies are happening. And I love the idea of you putting a whole course together around how you can still nourish yourself well, because you're right. Like when I look at the preparer stuff, it's usually like boxed, can, high ingredient type of stuff
Yeah.
that you can't read all the ingredients, or we go back to my childhood of cooking out of boxes that have the instructions on them.
And you also want to be in a situation where if you're being warned that there's an emergency coming, there's a blizzard, there's a flood, there's a hurricane, whatever, the last thing you really want to do, if you can at all help it, is get online at the grocery store with everybody else who's filled their shopping carts up with crappy food. Like you just don't
Mm,
want to be in that chaotic mind think. You want to be home going, oh, I've got what I need. I'm good.
mhm. Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. What a great way of taking care of yourself. Well, Mira, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate you. I know that this is going hopefully to hit home for some people. So, if you need more information on how we nourish and nurture ourselves through food and self love, Mira has some links below. I want you to go visit them, go shout out at her social media, and she's got all kinds of great tips that can come to you about how we really take care of ourselves through food, how we have this self love through food. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. It was lovely to talk with you.
You too. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Are you tuned in and you're like, I wish I had a group of women that I could have these conversations with so I could hear their real lives, how they're experiencing these challenges, how they're getting to the celebrations, how they're building a journey that is more joyful and confident? Well, I got you. I have created a community called the Modern Midlife Mentorship, where we have a modern perspective over what aging and what we look like aging looks like today. It doesn't have to be sitting in a rocking chair. In fact, there are so many women out there doing so many amazing things, as you can hear with my guests on the podcast. But in this modern midlife mentorship, we're going to bring a community together to rethink about what midlife can be like, really dive deep into the topics that are impacting us, like our health, our emotions, our mental health, our relationships, and that big piece of what do I want next for myself. So if you are interested in being in a community, making more connections with women in midlife, and getting all the tools you need to really move through the challenges and get to those celebrations, then I want you to click the button below for the Modern Midlife Mentorship. Learn more, reach out if you have any questions, and I would love to see you there. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed the episode and that you were able to get something out of it. If that's true, then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, every week this season, I am going to be releasing more. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. It all really helps us get seen by more women so that we can really revolutionize how we see aging and how we see ourselves while we're aging, so that we can age more joyfully and confidently. I hope you're gentle with your humanness, especially in midlife. Bye.